So in the coaching agreement, these three things must happen at least for the PCC level. Let's go back to the first thing again. The first one is to identify what the client wants in the session in 30-minute context. The second thing is to reconfirm and define the measure of success. It can be qualitative, quantitative, or both. The third, it's the importance. Why is it important for us to explore this today? What makes it meaningful for us to explore this? Why now? Let's look at this, right? The coaching agreement, one of the most elusive, one of the most, bewilderment, one of the most nerve-wracking thing in the coaching process. Many people say, okay, well, coaching agreement is just for the accreditation. No, it's not. Coaching agreement is actually the quintessential skill as a coach that you need, because that's how you set the KPI, the ROI for coaching. When your client comes to you and they ask you, hey, what's my ROI? What's my KPI for the session? The coaching agreement, it's the KPI, it's the ROI. For you to measure what happens in the whole coaching process, you need the coaching agreement. In the coaching agreement, there's two forms, there's two parts. One is the formative agreement, one's the sessional agreement. We cover all those in our live class as well as our upcoming online class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you through some of the key areas that you want to ask in the process so that you know exactly what to do. So in the OMG process, for some of you have been before, it's the outcome, the measure, and the goal. So the outcome measure comprise of the coaching agreement. That is the two components. The outcome, what the client wants to get out of this session, and the measure, how we're going to measure our success through this whole process, known as the coaching journey. So when we look at the outcome basically is this: the coach and the client must know what's the goal of the coaching conversation, and the client must be sure that that is what the client wants to do, and the coach's role is to facilitate that and to reconfirm whether that is really what the client wants. So I always say this: the outcome has three components: the what, the why, and the who. In our class, we share as well that the important thing for those of you doing ACC is to figure out what the client wants out of the session. For those of you going for PCC, it's to figure out what and why the client wants to do what they want to do. And when we move on to establish the outcome, we ask a few questions. Given the time that we have, what would you like to achieve? What would you like to focus on today? What would you like to achieve by the end of a coaching session? The measure. The measure is when we have a qualitative or quantitative form of measurement of how well the coaching conversation has gone. So it can be qualitative, it can be quantitative, or it can be both. And by that, what we mean is this. So for example, if it's a qualitative measure, it could be, I'm currently not very clear about where I want to be. Maybe for me to be absolutely clear, I would like to be pristine clear. So where I am, I'm not very clear. Where I would like to be, pristine clear. So there is a qualitative measure. Coach, I'm just feeling like maybe a 2 out of 10. I would like to be a 10 out of 10 of confidence by the end of the session. So there's a quantitative measure from a 2 to 10 out of 10. So again, all the measures are set by the client, and you as a coach are facilitating that in the process. We don't impose the measure, we utilize what the client has on the inside of them to move them in the whole conversation. So the establishment of measures are, for example, by the end of this conversation, how would we know if we have achieved our outcome? How would we know by the end of this conversation that we are successful together? So that's the establishment of measure. So the next one that we want to look at is the goal, which is the action steps forward, how we're going to move forward in this whole process, the accountability systems, and so on and so forth. Now, we will not focus on the goal so much today, but I want us to really look at the first part, which is the outcome and the measures. So let's go a little bit deeper in the outcomes and measures. First, the first important key is partnering with the client to identify or reconfirm what they want to accomplish in the session. And how that is done is focusing on the what they want to achieve in this session. So really in the coaching process, if you can identify what the client wants, you are one step closer. But realizing this, whatever the client comes to you with, it's never the real problem, because the problem is never the problem. So as a coach, your skill as a coach is then to facilitate the whole process to help the client unravel what is it that they really, really want. For example, the client come to us and say, hey, I want to lose weight, for example. But actually what they want is maybe just to gain more confidence or acceptance of themselves. And it's not about just losing weight. So the surface issue, it's just the what. So in the coaching process, the what has the surface issue, the subsurface issue, and the supersurface issues. So what is it that the client is really looking for? So that's what you can explore with the client. So they're clear about what they want, and that's the process of confirming and reconfirming in the whole process of coaching conversation. The second thing is the partners with the client to define what the client believes they need to address to resolve or to achieve what they want to accomplish in the session. So by this, what we mean is this: We want to work with the client to say, hey, Mr. Client, what do you believe that you have on the inside of you that can help you address this problem that you're facing? And what is the resolve that you can have to help you to overcome, this limiting beliefs, this setback, or this challenge, or this issue? So why this is important? Because we want to identify what is the belief that was underlying the behavior. So I always say this for all those of you who have been into my sessions before. I always say this: behavior shows up the belief. Behavior shows up the belief. So when we see the person's behavior, it always shows up the person's belief on the inside of them. So if we can unravel the belief and we can address that belief, we can help the client to resolve these issues much more effectively. So that's the belief. That's the who of the person, right? The values, the belief, the meaning. Now, again, this is not expected at the PCC level. This is expected at the MCC level, PCC to MCC level. At the ACC level, if we can reach to the beliefs and unravel the meanings and the values that holds true for the client, that's great, right? You can take a step further. Now, very important when we look at this whole process as well, it's the avoidance of imposition of your values or beliefs. All of us have different worldviews. You and I have different worldviews, different perspective of the world. There's 7.6 billion people on this planet, and all of us have a different perspective all over the world. Meaning to say, we're dealing with different individual human beings. So they may share certain commonality. However, all of us have fundamental differences in each one of us. So to respect and honor the client's map of the world, it's going to be very key for us to be able to help the person through the whole coaching process. Now, oftentimes I always hear this, that coaches are always telling the client, okay, I think that's the wrong path you should take. You should try this path. You should try that path. I've been there, done that. This is the path you should go for. Now, even if the coach have been there, done that, that doesn't mean that that's the best pathway for the client, because for the client, maybe there are more pathways. Maybe for the client, for them, maybe they're thinking of, okay, maybe I have something more creative. Maybe I have something more options that I've not considered before. And that is where you want to explore with the client. So the next key to think about is that the partners with the client to define or reconfirm the measures of success for what the client wants to achieve or accomplish in the session, to engage the session, engage the client as well. So what do we mean by this? We mean to say that in the process of unraveling the measure of success, we want to reconfirm, not just define, but reconfirm. Because along the way, as the journey unfolds, as more clarity is sought for, the client becomes clearer and clearer about what they really, really want, and that's the process that we're looking at as well. So that is the measure. That's the ROI of the coaching process. It can be both qualitative and quantitative in nature. The next one, partnering the client to manage the time and focus on the session. So meaning to say that if you have a 30-minute session with the client, as a coach, I'm mindful about the time that the client has given me. I have to honor the time. Many coaches say, if I'm a good coach, means I can talk for 2 hours, I can ask questions for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. No, that doesn't mean, the length of time doesn't mean how great a coach you are. Neither is how short the time. What really matters is how we honor the time that the client has given to us. For example, if the client has agreed 60 minutes with you, could you navigate with the client in that 60-minute time frame, in the coaching agreement time frame, to help the client to get to where they want to be? There are many issues to focus on, but in the 60-minute time frame, in the sessional goal, what is possible in these 60 minutes? So what I mean is this. We always hear coaches having clients and client telling them, hey, Mr. Coach, I would like to lose 10 kg by the end of the session. 10 kg, is that even possible to lose by the end of 1 hour? So as a coach, we want to help the client frame exactly what is achievable in the 60-minute time frame. Yes, the ultimate goal may be, overcoming certain setbacks, maybe getting that new job, maybe earning X amount of dollars, maybe losing the weight. But what is doable in this 60 minutes that we can work together so that we can measure from where we are to where we will be, and so we can move forward in that. In the coaching process, that's really, really key to identify what is it that the client really wants within the context of the session. And that's why you always hear me say the sessional outcome. Not the giant outcome. We know the giant outcome, that's where the client wants to be. But what is this session outcome in the 30 minutes that we have together? How are we going to achieve that together? So, and also, we are always continuing the coaching conversation in the direction that the client desires. Unless the client says, hey, maybe what I want to focus on really it's about confidence. So shall we explore that? Then you move there and navigate according to where the client wants to be. So that's the go forward measure. And the next one is the partners with client to end the coaching relationship in a way that honors the experience. This is what I always say. Coaching is not a concept to be taught or taught, but coaching is an experience to be experienced. So what I mean by that is that Many people try to sell coaching. They try to sell the concept of coaching. Oh, you got to have a coach, you got to do this, you need a coach to help you overcome breakthroughs. But what the client really wants is an experience. You bring them through this 30, 60 minutes, 2 hours conversation, and in the process is what we call transformative systematic change. And when that happens, something shifts in the client. That systemic shifts in the whole of the person approach, unraveling the greatness on the inside of the person, really honors the experience with the client. Now, this is something that we look at in the MCC, PCC, MCC level. How do we honor the experience? How do we create the experience that really counts? So, some of us have asked me, how do I actually, showcase, and what are the examples in it? So, I want to make reference that today in our practice, in the practice room later, refer to the ICF core competency rating list. If you're in the ACC level, look at the ACC column. If you're the PCC, look at the PCC column. If you're working towards your MCC, then look at the MCC column. And here are some examples. So some of you ask me, okay, so can you give me some examples of the questions I can ask? So one very important thing, that even though I show you the questions that you can ask to demonstrate your coaching agreement, but I want you to be mindful that these are the examples. There are many, many different ways you can ask. Depending on what the client is saying at the moment, you may want to adjust the way you ask. I'll give an example. What do you want to achieve in this session? Well, that is a what question, that's an outcome question. What do you want to achieve? Why do you want to achieve this? What would you like to work on today? What would you accomplish in the next 30 minutes that will make for a successful session? How would you know if the objectives were achieved at the end of the session? And what makes this important for you or to you? Other examples are, what is the motivation to work on the constant present? What makes this constant meaningful for you or to you? How much urgency do you feel to work on this issue? And what might you need to resolve to achieve your goal? And what would you like to be different for you at the end of the session? What topics would you like to explore to accomplish your goals? So these are various questions that would demonstrate core competency number 2 if you're working at the ACC level. Okay, so for those of you working at ACC level, if you ask any of these questions and work at the surface issues of the client, you would have achieved this competency marker. Now, for those of you who are working on your PCC level, there's something for you to look at. At the PCC level, I want all of us to focus on 3 areas just for today, right? The other 2 areas are going to be slightly harder or easier depending on the context. So the first behavior marker is that the coach helps the client identify or reconfirm what he, she, they want to accomplish in the session. I often say this, it's not just identify, but you want to identify and reconfirm it. And by that, this is an example. What would you like to work on today? Given the time that we have today, what would you like to explore, Mr. Client? During the whole process, maybe 10 minutes into the conversation, 15 minutes of conversation. Hey, Mr. Client, let's just do a quick check-in. We started today exploring on these areas. Where are we right now with those such strategies? Maybe after 5 minutes of forming the coaching agreement, you can ask this question as well. Well, let me play back to make sure I've got it right. So what I'm hearing for you is that you would like to achieve A, B, C, D by the end of the session. Did I miss anything out? So if you reconfirm that, you have accomplished the first behavior marker for your coaching agreement. The second point is to think about how you help the client define or reconfirm the measure of success. And I like to say this, it's not just defining, you want to define and reconfirm during the process of coaching. An example would be, what would the end of this session look like for us? What would success mean for us today? Well, what I'm hearing is that you would like to gain deeper clarity, and you are uncertain right now and about the way things are. So am I getting it right? Or is there something else that you'd like to explore? So, Mr. Client, let me check in with you on this. So what I'm hearing is that you like to go from a 2 to 8 in confidence. Right now you're about a 2, and you're saying that you like to have an 8 out of 10 of confidence by the end of the session. Did I get you right over there? So you want to reconfirm the measure of success with the client to make sure that you have this measure, so that at the start of the conversation, you know that the client and you know that you're at a 2. Midpoint, maybe the client's at 6. End point, maybe the client's at a 7. And you can check with the client, oh, Mr. Client, what is missing for us to reach an 8 today? That is a quantitative measure. It can be also a combination of 2, quantitative and qualitative in nature as well. The third area is to consider what is important or meaningful to the client about what he, she, or they want to accomplish in the session. So by that, what we say is this: why is it important for you? Why does this matter to you? In importance, there's 2 forms. One is importance in terms of what does it mean for you. The second level of importance is the urgency. Why now? we know it's important, but why now? Why is this topic coming up now? I mean, this topic probably has happened before in the past, but why specifically now? So in the coaching agreement, these three things must happen at least for the PCC level. Let's go back to the first thing again. The first one is to identify what the client wants in the session in 30-minute context. The second thing is to reconfirm and define the measure of success. It can be qualitative, quantitative, or both. The third, it's the importance. Why is it important for us to explore this today? What makes it meaningful for us to explore this? Why now? Sense of urgency. Why now? And then in the process, we're trying to unravel for the client what is happening for the client's world. This is a reflective inquiry process where we help the client to see what is happening on the inside world of them.